Hi, this is Jessica Kalinowski, and this is week 5 of using information effectively in philosophy. This week we had to read about fractals, which is a mathematical system and term created by Benoit Mandelbrot. Pardon me if I mispronounce that. I'm not very good at French. And he first talked about it in his book, The Fractal Geometry of Nature, and I believe that was in 1975. And basically he defined a fractal as a geometrical object that continues to exhibit detailed structure over a large range of scales. And that basically means that it's a complex geometrical shape that no matter if you zoom in or out, it's going to stay complex. Like, if you zoom in on a circle, it's just going to turn into a blob. It doesn't really have another shape. But a fractal, no matter how far you zoom in or zoom out, it's going to be complex. And when I say complex, I mean that it's going to have lots of components, not that it's complicated. And in fact, many fractals are formed using simple mathematical equations. Fractals give us a new way of looking at chaotic systems and describing them. And a good way to see this is the term self-similarity, which we use with fractals, and it's basically where the fractal image remains the same no matter the scale. And that's very similar with nonlinear systems, where no matter what frame you look at them, it's going to be complicated and have, not complicated, complex, and have many components to it, no matter what frame you're looking at. And then there's another part. Fractal images don't have a natural length scale, which basically means that a natural length scale is that an image can only be visible from a certain length scale, or a certain animal or property can only exist within a certain range. And their example was a flea. It can only be the size that it is now because if it was magnified 100 or 1,000 times, its body weight would crush its legs. So it can only live within a certain range. And I like to think of that as linear systems, where A plus B equals C, and it's not complex, and it's easy to define and put into a little box, I guess you could say. And then fractals have rough surfaces, and that's because of their complexity, which is comparable to the geometry of strange attractors in a chaotic system. So basically saying that since it's not smooth, it is complex, and since chaotic systems have many components that you can't tease apart, those are the strange attractors, so that its surface is also rough. And then when you shift the focus or the frame of a chaotic system, it is no less complex. It has multiple components that either when you zoom in, they become more complex, or when you zoom out into a broader frame, it's still as complex, or other parts of the system are shown. And my example of a fractal in animals is actually one of the most famous ones that pretty much everybody would know. It's the nautilus, which is actually the ancestor to modern squids and octopi. And they're actually still living now. There's a few in the National Aquarium in Baltimore, so I recommend going to see them. But they have multiple chambers in their shells, and they mostly live in one chamber, and then the rest of the broken up chambers in the spiral shape of their shell is used for buoyancy, and they have air pockets and such in them. And the most famous example is the Fibonacci spiral, which is the most perfect spiral, I guess you can say, for the nautilus shell. So it's the big spirally circle shell that everybody sees that's cut in half and has small chambers that get smaller and smaller as you get towards the center of the spiral. And this is a perfect example of a fractal because, as in the video that I've posted, you can tell that even though it looks extremely complex and complicated, it is based on a simple mathematical factor, where the nautilus grows. When it grows a new chamber, it grows up by a factor of 1.08 of the last size. And so that's very easy to tease out. However, it creates such a complex system in the animal. So it's a fractal, and it's also a chaotic system because it's hard to tease out where what part leads to another. Okay, so that's it for this week.